Why is this man banging his head against the cold hospital floor? He is not crazy. He is a father who just heard the sentence of death. $50,000. That was the price of a heartbeat. That was the price to fix the hole in his daughter's chest. But Arthur's pockets were empty, filled only with lint and a crumpled rejection letter from the insurance company. He grabbed the doctor's pristine white coat, his rough, calloused hands staining the fabric. "Please, doctor, I will sell my kidney. I will sell my eyes. Just save Lily. Please." The doctor peeled Arthur's fingers off his coat with a look of mild disgust, as if removing a sticky piece of tape. "Security," he said softly to the nurse. "Please remove this disturbance. The other patients are trying to rest." Thrown out into the relentless rain, Arthur sat on the curb. The water soaked through his thin shirt, mixing with the tears he could no longer hold back. He was a failure, a useless father who couldn't even protect the one thing that mattered. Then, a black limousine, long and silent like a hearse, pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, revealing a face sharp as a hawk, the Sterling family butler. "Get in, Mr. Arthur. We have a proposition for you. A job that no one else wants. If you survive, the $50,000 is yours." Arthur didn't hesitate. He didn't ask what the job was. He didn't ask if it was legal. He looked at the hospital window on the 3rd floor, where his daughter was fighting for every breath. And he stepped into the car. He would have walked into hell itself if it meant saving her, and little did he know, he was about to do exactly that. The Sterling Manor was not a home. It was a fortress of marble and gold. But Arthur wasn't taken to the grand guest rooms. He was led down a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever, descending into the damp, suffocating darkness of the earth. The air grew heavy. A smell hit him acrid, sour, the scent of unwashed clothes and decaying food. It smelled like a cage. "Here she is," the butler said, stopping before a heavy iron door with a small sliding slot. "Your bride." Bride Arthur blinked. He thought he was here to clean hazardous waste or dig graves. The butler unlocked the door and pushed it open. "Good luck. Try not to make her angry. She bites." The room was pitch black, save for a sliver of light from the hallway. In the corner, huddled under a pile of gray, moth-eaten blankets, was a shape. It was massive. It did not look human. Heavy breathing, raspy and wet, filled the silence. Arthur took a step forward. "Hello!" A roar erupted from the pile. A heavy ceramic plate flew out of the darkness, shattering against the wall inches from Arthur's head. "Get out!" The voice was guttural, distorted by years of screaming. "Get out or I'll kill you." Arthur flinched, but he didn't run. He had faced angry landlords, debt collectors, and street thugs. A voice in the dark didn't scare him. What scared him was the silence of his daughter's heart monitor. He knelt down, picking up a shard of the broken plate. He hissed in pain as the sharp edge sliced his thumb. A drop of red fell onto the dusty floor. The breathing in the corner stopped. The pile of blankets shifted. A pair of eyes appeared wild, bloodshot, buried deep within a face swollen and covered in angry, red scars. But they weren't looking at his face. They were looking at his bleeding hand. You bleed," the voice asked, trembling. It was a question filled with genuine shock, as if she had forgotten that other people could feel pain too. The ceremony took place the next morning in the backyard, near the garbage disposal area. There were no flowers, no music, no guests. Just the Sterling family standing on the marble balcony above, looking down like emperors watching a gladiatorial execution. Arthur stood in a suit that was 2 sizes too big, borrowed from the butler. Beside him stood Isabella. She was draped in a wedding dress that looked like it had been shredded by claws. It was stained and gray, straining against her large frame. She wore a thick veil, hiding the face that the family called a curse. Arthur could hear the snickering from the balcony. "Look at them." The stepmother laughed, sipping champagne. The beggar and the beast, a match made in the gutter. Isabella's fists were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. She was shaking, not from fear, but from a humiliation so deep it burned. Arthur reached out. He took her trembling hand. Her skin was rough, cold, and clammy. She tried to pull away, but he held on. He didn't squeeze. He just held it, firm and steady. "With this ring," Arthur whispered, sliding a simple band of woven dried grass onto her finger, "the only thing he could make in the basement, I promise to protect you." The laughter on the balcony stopped for a second. They expected disgust. They expected him to recoil. They didn't expect dignity. The stepmother sneered and tossed a heavy coin purse over the railing. It hit the mud at Arthur's feet with a wet thud. "There is your down payment, sewer rat. Now take your wife back to her cage." Arthur bent down. He picked up the money. It felt heavy, like lead. He needed this. For Lily. But as he stood up, he felt Isabella lean closer to him. Through the thick veil, a voice barely audible, like the rustle of dry leaves, reached his ear. "Why didn't you run? You are a fool. They will kill you once they get what they want." Arthur looked at the woman everyone called a monster. He looked up at the beautiful family that had just thrown money at him like he was a dog. "I have seen monsters," Arthur whispered back. "And believe me, Isabella, you are not the one wearing the mask." The basement room had no windows. But that night, Arthur decided to bring in the light. He couldn't stand the smell of neglect any longer. It wasn't just dirt. It was the scent of a soul rotting away in silence. He filled a rusted metal tub with warm water he had boiled on a portable stove. Steam rose into the damp air, softening the harsh shadows of the concrete walls. Isabella sat in the corner, clutching her dirty blanket like a shield. She watched him with suspicious eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she rasped. "The servants. They just hose me down with cold water, like a dog." Arthur didn't answer with words. He dipped a soft towel into the warm water, wrung it out, and approached her. "May I?" he asked, his voice low and steady. She flinched as if he was raising a whip. But when the warm cloth touched her cheek, she froze. A shudder ran through her massive frame. It had been years since she felt a touch that wasn't meant to hurt. Arthur worked in silence. He scrubbed away layers of grease, soot, and something that looked like deliberate black paint smeared on her face to make her look more grotesque. As the grime washed away, the truth began to surface. The scars on her cheeks weren't all real. Some were. Yes, angry red lines from untreated infections, but many were fake. Created by makeup artists hired by her stepmother to maintain the monster illusion. And then, as Arthur wiped the dirt from her shoulder, he stopped. Beneath the grime, the skin was porcelain white. And there, stark against the pale skin, was a birthmark in the shape of a crimson phoenix. It was intricate, almost regal. "You have a bird on your shoulder," Arthur said softly, dipping the towel again. Isabella looked down, tears welling up in her eyes, carving clean tracks through the remaining dirt on her face. "It's not a bird," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's a target. That mark is the only reason they haven't killed me yet." 2 days later, Arthur brought Lily to the manor. The $50,000 had paid for her emergency stabilization, but she was still frail, her face pale against the dark wool coat Arthur had wrapped her in. The stepmother had laughed when Arthur asked permission. "Bring the brat," she had sneered. "Let the beast eat her for all I care. One less mouth to feed." As Arthur carried Lily down the stairs, his heart hammered against his ribs. He was terrified. Not that Isabella would hurt Lily, but that Lily innocent, honest Lily would scream at the sight of Isabella. That scream would shatter the fragile confidence Isabella was just beginning to rebuild. The heavy iron door creaked open. Isabella was hiding under the bed, only her eyes visible in the gloom. "Lily, this is a friend," Arthur said, his voice tight. Lily wiggled out of Arthur's arms. She stood on her small, wobbly legs and peered into the darkness. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She tilted her head, her big eyes blinking. "Are you playing hide and seek?" Lily asked, her voice echoing in the stone room. Isabella slowly crawled out. She was still large, still scarred, still intimidating in the shadows, but Lily just walked forward and touched Isabella's hand. "Your hand is cold," Lily said matter-of-factly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a half-eaten chocolate bar. "You want this? Daddy says chocolate makes the cold go away." Isabella stared at the small hand offering her the treat. Her lip quivered. She slowly reached out, her fingers trembling as she took the chocolate. "You aren't afraid?" Isabella asked, her voice barely audible. "Daddy says monsters live under the bed." Lily grinned, showing a missing front tooth. "But you were under the bed, and you look sad." "Monsters aren't sad. Monsters are mean. So you must be a princess hiding from the dragon." Isabella broke. A sob, loud and wrenching, escaped her throat. She pulled Lily into a hug, burying her face in the child's small shoulder. For the first time in 10 years, the basement didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a home. From her pocket, Isabella pulled out an old, tarnished hair clip covered in grime. "Here," she whispered, "for the princess." Arthur glanced at the clip, beneath the dirt. Something sparked in the dim light. It wasn't glass. It was a raw, uncut diamond the size of a thumb. Life in the basement developed a rhythm, but the piece was fragile. Every evening at 6 p.m., the butler would slide a tray of food through the slot. Usually, it was leftovers: cold steak, stale bread, or soup that smelled slightly sour. Tonight, it was porridge. It smelled sweet. Too sweet. A heavy scent of almonds and vanilla masked something metallic underneath. "Eat up!" Beast the guard outside shouted, kicking the door. Isabella reached for the bowl. She was hungry. Since she started moving around and playing with Lily, her appetite had returned. "Wait!" Arthur's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. He lifted the bowl to his nose. His years as a plumber had trained him to smell danger gas leaks, sewage, chemical runoff. This smell triggered an alarm in his brain. It smelled like the rat poison he used to use in old ventilation ducts. "Don't eat this," Arthur commanded. "I'm starving." "Arthur?" Isabella complained, trying to pull away. "It smells good today." Arthur didn't argue. He took a spoonful of the porridge and walked to the corner of the room, where a small mouse hole was hidden behind a loose brick. He placed the spoon on the floor. A small gray mouse scurried out, twitching its nose. It ate the porridge greedily. Arthur and Isabella watched in silence. 10 seconds passed. The mouse stopped moving. 20 seconds. It began to spasm. 30 seconds. It lay on its side, stiff and lifeless. Isabella gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. Her eyes went wide with horror as she looked from the dead mouse to the bowl of food she had almost devoured. They aren't just starving me, she whispered, her voice trembling with a terrifying realization. They are actively killing me. Arthur stood up. His face hardened. The sadness in his eyes was replaced by a cold, burning fury. He walked over to the corner of the room and looked directly up at the blinking red light of the surveillance camera. He didn't speak. He didn't scream. He simply picked up the bowl of poisoned porridge and slowly, deliberately, poured it onto the floor while staring straight into the lens. Message received, he thought. War declared. The basement became a sanctuary of transformation. For the next 3 months, Arthur didn't just act as a caretaker. He became a coach. He cleared a space in the clutter for exercise. Without gym equipment, he improvised. Heavy water jugs became dumbbells. The old rusted pipes became pull-up bars. Isabella, fueled by the rage of the poisoning attempt, attacked the workouts with a ferocity that frightened even Arthur. Sweat poured down her face, washing away the years of lethargy. The fat, which had been a prison built by forced overfeeding, began to melt away. Muscles, long dormant, began to sculpt her limbs. But the body was only half the battle. The mind was the true weapon. While Arthur taught Lily how to read using old newspapers, Isabella directed him to the forgotten archives, a pile of damp boxes in the corner that her stepmother had thrown down years ago, thinking they were trash. Dig deeper. Arthur, Isabella commanded, her voice growing stronger, less raspy. Look for the blue folder. My father never trusted that woman. He was a paranoid man. He always had a contingency plan. Arthur sifted through moldy receipts and tax returns until his fingers touched something cold hidden inside the lining of an old, moth-eaten teddy bear. It wasn't a folder. It was a metallic USB drive with a phoenix emblem engraved on it. Plug it in, Isabella said, her eyes gleaming in the dim light of the laptop Arthur had smuggled in. The screen flickered to life. Documents scrolled past. Bank accounts in Switzerland. Hidden assets. And most importantly, the real last will and testament. Arthur's eyes widened as he read the final clause. In the event of my death, 60% of the Sterling Empire goes to my daughter, Isabella. If she is incapacitated, the assets are frozen until her recovery. The stepmother receives nothing. She's been lying for 10 years. Arthur whispered. She didn't inherit the company. She's just been the caretaker pretending to be the owner. Isabella smiled. It was a sharp, predatory smile. And tomorrow, the caretaker gets fired. The summons came on a Tuesday night. The intercom buzzed, the harsh voice of the stepmother echoing in the stone room. Bring the beast and her pet plumber upstairs. We need entertainment for our guests. Arthur put on his only suit, cleaned and pressed. Though the fabric was worn thin, Isabella draped herself in the oversized gray rags she usually wore. She wasn't ready to reveal her new form yet. She patted her clothes with pillows to maintain the illusion of obesity. The dining hall was a blinding display of crystal chandeliers and silver platters. The stepmother sat at the head of the table, surrounded by wealthy sycophants and her arrogant son, Julian. Ah, the smell of the sewers has arrived. Julian laughed, tossing a chicken bone onto the floor near Arthur's feet. Pick it up. Plumber, that's your dinner. Arthur didn't move. He stood tall, his chin up. I am not a dog. Julian. Silence fell over the room. The stepmother's eyes narrowed. You are whatever I say you are, she hissed. Now kneel and clean my shoes. They have a speck of dust on them. 2 burly guards stepped forward, hands on their batons. Arthur clenched his fists. He could fight, but not against armed men. He began to lower his knee. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder. It wasn't a guard. It was Isabella. She limped forward, playing the part of the broken monster. She knelt before the stepmother. "Let me do it. Mother," she wheezed. "I am good at cleaning filth." The stepmother smirked, extending her foot. "Good girl. Know your place." Isabella reached out with a rag, but instead of wiping the shoe, her hand shot up and clamped around the stepmother's ankle. The grip was iron. The stepmother gasped, trying to pull back, but her leg was locked in a vice. "Let go!" she shrieked. "You're hurting me!" Isabella looked up. Under the hood of her rags, her eyes were not the eyes of a victim. They were cold, hard, and terrifyingly lucid. She squeezed harder. A sickening crack of a high heel snapping echoed in the room. "Oops," Isabella whispered, her voice devoid of the rasp she usually faked. "Clumsy me." She released the ankle. The stepmother recoiled, rubbing her leg, looking at Isabella with a sudden flicker of fear. For a second, she saw something familiar: the eyes of her late husband. The dinner ended in chaos. The guests were ushered out, whispering about the mad woman. Back in the basement, the atmosphere was tense. They knew retaliation was coming. An hour later, the intercom buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a summons. It was a decree. "Listen to me, you freaks." The stepmother's voice was shaking with rage. "Tomorrow night is the Grand Jubilee. After the party, I am signing the papers to commit Isabella to the Blackwood Asylum, permanently. And you, plumber, you and your brat will be on the street." The line went dead. Arthur looked at Isabella. She was stripping off the pillows, patting her clothes, revealing a waist that was slender and strong. She pulled the USB drive from her pocket. "They think they are evicting us," Arthur said, looking at his sleeping daughter. "We have to leave tonight. We can take the evidence to the police." "No police!" Isabella cut him off. Her voice was sharp. "Police can be bought. Judges can be bribed. We've seen that happen for 10 years. She walked over to the mirror, wiping the fake grease paint from her face. The woman in the reflection was beautiful. Yes, but dangerous. "Then what do we do?" Arthur asked. "The Grand Jubilee." Isabella turned to him. "All the shareholders will be there. The press, the board of directors, the people who worshipped my father." She walked over to a dusty trunk in the corner, one Arthur hadn't opened yet. She kicked the lock off. Inside, preserved in plastic, was a dress of crimson-red silk, the color of fire, the color of a phoenix rising. "We don't run, Arthur. We attend the party. We are going to walk through the front door, and we are going to burn their empire to the ground." The day of the Grand Jubilee arrived. The manor above buzzed with activity, but the basement was silent. Arthur stood nervously by the door. He had cut his hair and shaved his beard, wearing the suit Isabella had ordered for him online using a secret account. He looked dashing, far from the desperate man who had begged for money months ago. "Is it time?" Arthur asked. The bathroom door creaked open. Arthur stopped breathing. Isabella stepped out. The beast was gone. In her place stood a queen. The crimson dress flowed around her like liquid fire, hugging the curves she had worked so hard to reclaim. Her hair, once matted and dull, now cascaded down her back in glossy, dark waves. But it was her face that held Arthur captive. Without the fake scars and grime, she was breathtaking. Her high cheekbones and sharp jawline commanded attention. The phoenix birthmark on her shoulder was no longer hidden. It was displayed proudly, framed by the red silk. "You look," Arthur stammered, unable to find the words. "Like a monster," Isabella teased, a small smirk playing on her red lips. "Like a war," Arthur corrected. "You look like a beautiful war." A knock came at the heavy iron door. It wasn't the guards. It was a group of 3 elderly men and women, the former head of legal, the former stylist, and the old head of security, the old guard loyal to her father. "We received your signal, Miss Sterling," the old lawyer said, bowing his head. "The car is waiting at the back entrance. The guards have been temporarily distracted." Isabella nodded, sliding her feet into diamond-encrusted heels. She looked at the damp walls of her prison one last time. "Goodbye, darkness," she whispered. She turned to Arthur and took his arm. "Are you ready to meet the real me husband?" The ballroom was a sea of black ties and glittering gowns. The air smelled of expensive perfume and hypocrisy. On the stage, the stepmother held a microphone, feigning tears. "It breaks my heart that my dear stepdaughter, Isabella, could not join us due to her condition. Her mind is gone. But tonight, we celebrate the future, led by my son, Julian." Applause rippled through the room. Julian stepped forward, smug and preening like a peacock. Suddenly, the massive double doors at the back of the hall slammed open. The sound echoed like a gunshot, silencing the orchestra. Heads turned. Gasps followed. Walking down the grand staircase was not a madwoman. It was a vision in red. Isabella moved with a predatory grace, her hand resting lightly on the arm of a handsome man in a sharp black suit. "Who is that?" whispers flew across the room. "Is that a movie star? Is that royalty?" No one recognized her. The transformation was too absolute. The stepmother dropped her champagne glass. It shattered, but the sound was swallowed by the murmurs of the crowd. Julian, ever the womanizer, didn't recognize his own sister. He saw only a stunning conquest. He adjusted his tie and practically ran down the steps to intercept them. "Good evening, beautiful stranger," Julian said, flashing his practiced smile, completely ignoring Arthur. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Julian Sterling, the owner of all this. And you are..." Isabella stopped. She looked at her brother with eyes that danced with amusement and ice. "You really don't know who I am, do you, Julian?" she asked, her voice smooth as velvet. Julian laughed nervously. "I think I would remember a face like yours." Isabella leaned in close, her perfume intoxicating him. She whispered, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear, "You used to call me Piggy. You used to throw bones at me. Do you remember now?" "Brother," the color drained from Julian's face. He stumbled back as if he had seen a ghost. "Isabella," he choked out. The name rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. The stepmother rushed forward, her face a mask of panic and rage. "Security," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Throw these imposters out. She is a fraud. My daughter is sick in bed." The security guards moved forward, but the old guard, Isabella's loyalists, stepped in their path, blocking them. Isabella walked past her frozen brother and ascended the stage. She took the microphone from the stand. The room was deadly silent. "My stepmother says I am sick." Isabella's voice boomed through the speakers. "She says I am mad." She reached into her clutch and pulled out the USB drive. She plugged it into the presentation laptop on the podium. The giant screen behind her, which was displaying Julian's face, flickered. Then, a video began to play. It was grainy footage from the basement camera. It showed the stepmother mixing white powder into a bowl of porridge. It showed Julian laughing as he kicked the door. It showed the mouse dying in 10 seconds. Gasps of horror filled the room. The flash of cameras began to pop like fireworks. "This," Isabella pointed at the screen, "is how they treated the heir of the Sterling Empire. They poisoned me. They starved me. They forged my father's will." She turned to the stepmother, who was now trembling, clutching the podium for support. "It's over, Mother," Isabella said coldly. The board has already received copies of the real will. The police are waiting outside. And the press, well, they are filming your finale right now. The stepmother looked around. Her allies were backing away. Her friends were averting their eyes. The empire she had stolen was crumbling in seconds. "You ungrateful wretch!" the stepmother screamed, lunging at Isabella. But Arthur was there. He didn't hit her. He simply stepped in front of Isabella, his broad chest acting as a wall. The stepmother collided with him and fell back onto the floor, her expensive dress tangling around her legs. "Don't touch my wife," Arthur said, his voice low but thundering with authority, "or you'll wish you were still in the basement." The party was over, but the spectacle had just begun. The wailing of sirens cut through the elegant classical music, a harsh reminder of reality crashing into the sterling fantasy. Police officers swarmed the ballroom. They didn't come for the guests. They came for the hosts. The stepmother, disheveled and frantic, tried to play her last card. "Do you know who I am?" she screamed at the police chief. "I can buy your entire precinct. I will have your badge." The chief, a stern man who had seen the evidence Isabella sent an hour ago, simply took out a pair of cold, steel handcuffs. "Your money has been frozen, ma'am, along with your assets. You can't even buy a stick of gum right now." The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound Arthur had ever heard. It was the sound of justice finally catching up. Julian, the arrogant brother, tried to sneak away through the kitchen exit, but he ran straight into the old guard security team. He wasn't so tough without his mother. He fell to his knees, sobbing like a child, begging for mercy, the very mercy he had denied his sister for 10 years. As the police dragged the stepmother past Isabella, the older woman stopped. Her eyes were wild, filled with hate. "You think you've won?" she spat. "You are still a monster inside. No one will ever truly love you." Isabella didn't flinch. She didn't scream back. She simply looked at Arthur, who was holding Lily's hand nearby. "I used to believe that," Isabella said calmly. "But then I found people who loved the monster before they saw the queen. That is a wealth you will never understand." The doors closed behind the police, sealing the fate of the wicked. The moral boomerang had returned, and it had hit with the force of a hurricane. 3 days later, the Sterling Manor was quiet again, but the air was lighter. The darkness of the basement felt like a distant nightmare. Isabella was busy. She was in meeting after meeting, taking back control of her father's empire. Lawyers, investors, and news crews surrounded her constantly. She was radiant, powerful, and utterly out of Arthur's reach. Arthur stood in the hallway, holding a small duffel bag, the same bag he had arrived with. He looked at his reflection in the grand mirror. He saw a plumber, a man with rough hands and no degree, a man who had served his purpose. "The contract is over," he whispered to himself. "She has her life back. She doesn't need a fake husband anymore." He walked to the nursery to get Lily. The little girl was playing with a mountain of new toys Isabella had bought her. "Come on, sweetie," Arthur said, forcing a smile. "It's time to go home." "Home?" Lily asked, looking confused. "But this is home. The princess lives here." Arthur's heart broke. The princess is a queen now. Lily, and queens live in castles. We live in the real world." He left a letter on the dining table, right next to the grass ring he had woven for Isabella. He couldn't bear to say goodbye in person. It would hurt too much. As they walked out of the heavy iron gates, the sky turned gray. A light rain began to fall, matching the emptiness in Arthur's chest. He had saved the damsel, but he knew the story: the knight doesn't always get to stay in the castle. The bus stop was cold. Arthur sat on the bench, wrapping his coat around Lily to shield her from the wind. The bus to the lower district was late, as always. Suddenly, the rhythmic sound of rain was drowned out by the roar of an engine. A sleek, silver Rolls-Royce screeched to a halt right in front of the bus stop, splashing a puddle of water onto the sidewalk. The door flew open. Isabella didn't wait for a chauffeur. She stepped out into the rain, still wearing her business suit, her hair instantly getting soaked. She looked furious. "Arthur," she shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. Arthur stood up, stunned. "Isabella, what are you doing? You'll ruin your shoes." To hell with the shoes, she marched over to him, grabbing the lapels of his cheap coat. "You are in breach of contract, Mr. Arthur blinked. "Breach no, but I. The contract was to help you get the inheritance. You have it. I'm releasing you." "Did you read the fine print?" Isabella cried, tears mixing with the rain on her face. She pulled out the crumpled letter he had left, and the grass ring. She held up the ring. This is the only contract I care about. You promised to protect me. Does protecting me include leaving me alone in that big, empty house?" Arthur looked at her. He saw the Queen. Yes, but he also saw the woman from the basement, the woman who needed him, the woman he had fallen in love with in the dark. "I'm just a plumber." "Isabella," Arthur said softly, "I have nothing to give you." Isabella shook her head. "You gave me my life. You gave me my dignity. You gave me a family." She knelt down on the wet pavement, ruining her $1,000 pants right in front of Lily. "Lily," she asked, ignoring the shocked bystanders, "do you want to go back to the castle? Or do you want to leave with Daddy?" Lily looked at Arthur, then at Isabella. "I want both," she said firmly. Isabella looked up at Arthur, extending the grass ring to him. "Then we need a new contract," she whispered. "No expiration date, no conditions, just us." Arthur looked at the woman he loved kneeling in the rain. He dropped the duffel bag. He reached down, pulled her up, and kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of rain, tears, and a promise kept. "I'll have to charge you extra for weekends," Arthur joked through his tears. Isabella laughed, burying her face in his chest. "Deal."